All right, folks, welcome back to Mike Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 64 today. Evolve a near death experience with Cindy Massey. Check us out at Mike and Maurice mindescape.com and check us out at Patreon /Mike and Maurice. Our guest today has just released a book. Like I said, Evolve a near death experience. And welcome, Cindy Massey.
Thank you.
So,
Nice to meet you.
you reached out. I believe you saw our episode with Dr. Penny Sartori about near death experiences, and you reached out to me and said you had your own experience and that you were working on a book. You just released your book. I read it. Very good. I've read a few near death experience books. A couple of them were kind of like, but this one I felt like there was some cool stuff in there and a unique perspective and everything. So why don't you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this whole being an author and if the experience that you went through, how it transformed you and everything.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that writing a book was not real high on my list, like for many, many years. I had the experience, I remembered it, and I remembered the circumstances around that, but writing a book was not really something I wanted to do. But because I guess the reason being that people who were part of my family didn't receive it very well. It was weird,
Yeah.
probably scary. What is she talking about? Did she make this up? All of those kinds of things. They even took me to a priest.
Wow.
He
So
got more scared than my mother.
So is this was from an early
Watch out.
You like that?
this is from an early
Yeah.
age that you were
Yeah, I was 3 years old at the time.
and so they just regarded it as just some
Oh yeah.
nonsense or like a dream or something like that.
Yeah, she probably just had a dream. It's no big thing. Um, and the entities that I saw, well, she probably saw them in a maybe a book. Or my grandmother was very Catholic. My mother said, well, she probably saw them in her grandmother's house. The problem was that I was born legally blind.
Wow.
I didn't see that well.
Right.
I didn't. And so, but you'll be glad to know that when I had the near death experience, I saw perfectly.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know.
So you were born blind and then you had this experience. So what did they make of that then as far as
Well, they
because
couldn't explain it. See, that was the problem. They couldn't explain it. They took me to the truly, out of their realm of understanding. They just, back then, it just wasn't talked about.
do you
Anything like that.
do you remember being blind like when you're obviously you remember this experience, but do you remember before that and not having any sight?
I could see things, but like trees were like a stick, like a thick stick, and then it had a green blob on it on
Oh,
the
okay.
top part. So I could see color, but I
Yeah.
couldn't make out anything unless I was right on top of it,
Gotcha.
nose to nose, literally. Then I could see it really well, but I was something like, I think the doctor said I was 2400 in both
Oh, wow.
eyes. And he said, she should have had glasses, the minute she was born, but she didn't, because they didn't know that I couldn't see well. They just thought I was kind of dull witted, because I
Sure.
tripped, I was clumsy, and
Well, you couldn't see where you were going.
I couldn't see where I was going. And they thought I was dull witted because I couldn't memorize the board in the Catholic school. I went to Catholic school. I couldn't memorize the board fast enough when I walked by. And they always put me to the back of the room because I was quiet. I didn't say much. So I'll put her in the back of the room. She doesn't talk, right? So I couldn't see anything. So that was it.
So when you had this experience, did it have when you were, obviously you were young, what do you think was Like what set this whole thing up, or was there?
Okay, what happened was that I remember being put in my crib. It was like a sunny day, and I'll tell you why I know that in a minute. It was a sunny day. It was in the afternoon probably, and I was put down for a nap in my crib. And I remember my mother telling me to go to sleep. And I remember, because I was asthmatic as a child, I had trouble breathing. So what happened was I was breathing. Okay, it was labored. It was hard, but I was breathing. And all of a sudden, I breathed in, and then everything stopped. No breathing out, just everything stopped. And then I looked out of, I guess I opened my eyes and I looked down on my body. There was a little body on the crib, in the crib. And the first thing I thought of was, wow, that body is small. Right? And so
Yeah.
I looked down on it, and somehow it didn't feel like it was me, you know. I didn't have any attachment. I wasn't sad or anything. It looked to me like a crumpled up paper bag on a small bed is what it looked like. And I remember looking down on my body, okay, and it wasn't like physical. It was a spiral. It was a spiral of I didn't know it was called energy back then, but that's what it was. It was kind of like sparkly stuff in a swirl. That's the best way I can describe it. And I thought, wow, how does all of that fit in that little body? That totally amazed me.
So what, it was like a essence, or like I'm just when you say energy, was it like light energy or
Yes,
just
it was like a sparkly light, you know, and it was in a swirl pattern, you know, a swirling pattern, and it was tall. That's why I was amazed at how big it was and how it could fit in such a small body. And then when I was sort of bored, and I said, well, since I'm out anyway, I might as well go look and see what's happening. That's when I went to the window, and I looked out, and it was sunny. What I couldn't understand was why the earth was black. And because every time that as I remembered, and even as I was older, the dirt that I saw was brown.
right?
You know, like you would see in a garden or something. But this dirt was black. And when I mentioned this to my mother, she looked at me and she said, that wasn't earth, that was tar on the roof of the next house. Because
Oh,
in
okay.
San Francisco, they put the houses really close together, you know.
Sure.
So if you're up high enough, you can see the tops of the houses. It was tar roof. That's
So
why.
it was it still like nighttime though when you were?
No, it was daytime because I could see it clearly.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of blue with some white clouds, as I remember. The sun was out, and I was looking out the window, and then I kind of floated back over near my body and looked at it once more, and then there was this big hole that was in the wall. And I went over to it. It didn't have any sound in it. It just was revolving around like a dryer, you know, a dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I put my hand in because I was unfamiliar. I'd never seen one of these things before. I put my hand in and then tried my foot and then my head, and then so nothing happened. It was bad. That's when I went in it. That was the starting of the process. And when I have spoken to people who have studied the near-death experience, that's what they call the tunnel. But I wouldn't have known that at 3 because I didn't know tunnels then.
Yeah.
I just knew it was a big black hole, and I went in it. That's what I knew.
So you were just speaking about entities. What were these? Were they relatives, or you don't know?
No. I didn't see any relatives. Nobody I knew was where I went.
Sure.
These entities were let's see. I was raised in a Catholic family, but my mother didn't go to church, and I didn't see my grandmother very much. Okay, and I'm telling you this because there's a reason. However, I was to find out later that according to the Catholic Church, the man that I saw would be called Jesus, but that wasn't what he was called. He was just called him, not a name. Okay, and the lady was his mother, and she looked like the statues in the Catholic Church, but I didn't know her name either. I didn't know either of these people's names. And I'll tell you something, these people were tall. I'm not talking 6 feet tall. I'm talking probably 8 to 9 feet tall.
Wow.
These were tall people.
But they were people in your eyes.
Yeah, they were. Well, you know, they had physicality. Like I'm looking at you, you have physicalness. Mm-hmm. The difference is that with him, there was a light, a gold light that emanated from his entire body that had to be 6 feet from his body. So when he put out his hand to greet me, the shafts of gold light extended from his fingers. Yeah, and it was all around his head and his body.
I've heard that before.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that report not being able to see hands or feet, but that there's just this light that emanates from these entities, whether it's a family member or Jesus or whoever.
Right? And so he did have physicality because I sat on his knee and I could feel his knee, his leg, when I sat on it. Okay. But that the light was extremely blinding. Yeah, I mean, seriously, if you held up your hand to your face, you could not see your hand. It was that strong when I saw him.
So just to play the other side here for a second.
Sure.
Is it possible that what you were feeling or experiencing was some sort of like early archetype, type of subconscious thing? Like you said, you were raised in the Catholic Church. Maybe seeing these.
You were baptized.
Yeah, maybe there was some weird thing, maybe you were dreaming or had some, and I'm not saying that that's the case, but I'm just saying.
Right. Bring it up.
What was the, how were you able to distinguish from something like that? Like there's, I don't know if you're familiar. We do a lot of episodes on DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and people that go under these experiences, whether it's ayahuasca or the actual experience, recall talking with entities, experiencing entities, and there's a debate whether these are external or manifestations of our, the archetypes that are within us.
Well, I can't say that I would absolutely rule that out. But I will tell you that I've had dreams. Number one, that the first thing I would tell you was that the dreams I've had after that were not anything like that. They were totally different. And many of them I don't even remember. This one I remembered. It was, and keep in mind that before I was 3, at 3 or before, I with the exception of baptism, I probably was not in the church or attended. No, my mother didn't attend church, and she and my grandmother didn't get along, so I didn't see my grandmother that often.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I was limited, so I would say that the part of the experience, we'll call it an experience, that the part of the experience that was so impactful to me was when I looked into his eyes. Because looking into his eyes was like looking into eternity.
So was it like more of a feeling than a a visual experience?
It was like it was a feeling and it was a visual. Because see, there, which is that's the other thing, there is very different than here. Here, you and I are talking with Maurice, and we're going through stuff, and we're primarily communicating on a verbal level, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And so what happens here is that you can be verbal and lie or not lie. And the feeling may or may not go to the other person, okay? There, it's like standing in your underwear. There is no lying, because everything you think and say and feel goes and transfers to the other person. Very different than here. Very different. I couldn't understand that for a long time. And as a child, it was very confusing, because there, it was very open and very direct, and it was a very all of the entities I met were very kind, but you knew exactly, because you would know the feeling. Like, it would be like saying to someone, "I love you," okay, and the person goes, "Oh, okay." It's not like that. All of the feeling of love for that individual immediately transfers to them. That's how it works.
So it's like almost telepathic or
It
something.
is telepathic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't speak words with their mouth. Their mouth doesn't move.
That's
They
pretty
just
common
think.
too. And actually, I mean, there's speculation that might be our evolution too. I know your book's called Evolve. Like that might be
Mm-hmm,
the evolution of humanity
mm-hmm,
is achieving this
mm-hmm.
telepathy, and that way you don't have to, like you said, there's people that
Yeah,
lie and
yeah,
scheme, and you don't really know true
whatever.
intentions. But if you're able to feel that or
Yeah,
see through that, that's a whole different ball
it's
game.
a whole different ball game. It would change everything,
Right.
and that's part of what, especially children who have a near-death experience. That's something that they really have trouble with. That they have trouble making sense of it, because here is here and there is there,
Yeah, I
and they're not
wonder.
necessarily the same.
Are you familiar with other
Yes,
children's near death experiences? Because it's something that I've looking into the subject and researching a little
I
bit.
have. Well, I met Dr. Morris about 20 years ago, and he specialized in children's near-death experiences. And I introduced him to a friend of mine who had a son who had a near-death experience, and his name is Chris. And Chris, when I first met him, I didn't know him, okay, at all. I knew his mother, but I didn't know him. And we met each other, and there was an instant recognition. And his mother was even surprised. She said, "He doesn't talk like that to other people." And I said, "Really?" She says, "No." She said it was like instant recognition between the two of you.
Wow.
And so when Dr. Morris talked with me, he said, I actually, he said, started my study because I was a skeptic. But it was the children who showed me that, yeah, that's just not, it's not what you think it is. It's different there. It's than here. And some people, and some of the children meet their families, deceased relatives, that kind of thing. I was young enough that most of the people were still on the planet, right? Maybe if I was in my 40s, they'd be, most of them would be gone, or some would be gone, but I was
Right.
only 3. So pretty much everybody was on the planet. And
So
so,
back to your experience really quick though. So you said that you took a breath and then didn't remember breathing. Do you think that your near death experience had to do with you stopping breathing, or what was the and
that was the jump start. Usually, there's a crisis. Near-death experiences, from what I have studied, later on when I
right
became interested, is usually occurs as a result of a crisis. Usually,
accident
it's a
or something?
yeah. Usually, it's a water crisis.
Yeah,
Usually, but
drowning's
it
a
can be,
popular
yeah.
one.
Drownings are big ones. Yeah. And I was drowning in the liquid of my body, of the mucus. I couldn't breathe. So I was drowning,
Okay.
and that was it. I was down for the count, because they had tried everything to try to mitigate my breathing problems, but to no avail, because I was living in San Francisco, and that's a wet place.
Sure.
Rains a lot. It's damp.
So you had like asthma or
anything like respiratory. Yeah, not a good place.
Okay.
Arizona, dry out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what kickstarted it. That's what started the whole thing rolling, and then it just progressed on. And it, it's interesting about time. I was 3 and I had no idea how much time. It could have been 10 minutes. It could have been 10 hours. It could have been 10 seconds. I don't know. Because there was no clock. And even if there was, I probably couldn't tell you the time.
Right.
So I have no idea about the time frame. It just seemed like a really long experience to me. Because I saw many different things. I was told different things. And I didn't know at that time the impact it would have. It's not like you have an experience, say a dream. We'll just say a dream. You have a dream, and then maybe you talk about it to some people, maybe you don't, and then your life goes on. No, that's not what happens. That's not what happens. So, your life is forever changed once you have these. Even if you try to squash it down, forget it, and not deal with it, it'll come back. It's just, that's what it is. It'll come back. And you still have to deal with it.
Have you had any synchronicities in your
all
later
throughout
years from
all
what
throughout
happened?
my life. All throughout my life. Yeah.
And what has it led you on, like some sort of knowledge quest, or like what is it showing you to do? Or
I think that probably it kind of reinforced that I was going to do something for the planet. I had no idea, again, about the book.
Right.
I wound up teaching abroad for several years. And a request was asked of me regarding the book. And I said, no, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm teaching. I'm this, I'm that. And so it was put on hold for many, many, many years. Until finally it came to the point where, no, you really have to let the world know. Yeah, but my feeling was there was 9 million books out there on near-death experiences. What's one more or one less? That was my feeling.
Right.
Nope, you got to put it out. You got to do it because it's different than the others. And I've read, over the years, I read near-death experiences, primarily by adults. Okay,
Right. Like
because
Life
most
After
children,
Life, or
yeah,
Proof
that's
of Heaven,
right.
some of
Yeah,
that
that's
stuff.
right. They're mostly adult ones. See, children don't normally write books about near-death experiences.
Sure.
They have other things to do in their life. They're writing a book. So there's far and few between. But I can remember talking with Chris many years ago, and I said, "What did you think about when you were in the river?" Because what happened was his dad's car with the whole family went over the bridge and went into the river. So a water accident in the winter. Okay.
Right.
And he said, I went through the noodle. The noodle. That was, there it was, he called it a noodle. And when we talked about it, I said, but he said it was a different kind of a noodle. It wasn't like a noodle you eat. Oh, it was a different noodle. What kind of noodle? Well, and he was trying to explain to me and the little animals he saw and all of that stuff. See, his was a little different than mine. And so, and his mom knew about it. She was well aware of it. And Dr. Morris interviewed him. And he said he pretty much went through a classic NDE, as I did. He just didn't see the entities that I saw, that I would see later. That talk about a synchronicity. When I saw these entities, I would see them later. I wasn't even in school. I was 3.
Right.
But when I went to Catholic school, there they were. They were in statue form. I went, oh, wait, I've seen these people before. I remember these people. And so, see, for me, it was different because my life was going to unfold differently. So that's probably the biggest synchronicity that I saw over time.
Are you a religious person now, or?
I would say I'm spiritual. I wouldn't say that I'm religious, but I am spiritual.
Okay.
I don't speak. If I had to say one religion I'm partial to, it's probably be Buddhism. I live in a Catholic country, you know, and I would go to mass, but I can't say that I'm a practicing Catholic. I couldn't say that, although I was raised in Catholic school.
Right. But
So
I was gonna say, you did see Jesus, though, don't you? Wouldn't that
Yeah,
propel you to kind of follow a Christian-based religion, or?
it would be Christian. I would say that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think probably the priest's what do you call it? His response to what I told him, what I saw. I told him very little. When I saw what happened was the colors around his body changed. They reversed and they changed and they got funny. That's all there was. And immediately when I see that, I've shut down. I just don't even can't remember anything. Don't even know my name. I don't know. Not sure, you know, that kind of thing, because I just don't want to be involved in any of that. I know what I saw, Dad. I'm not gonna do that. Not gonna go there. So the response at being at the 3-year-old level was not that positive. I tried it once again with the Lutherans. They weren't doing handstands across the floor either. So I kind of gave that up for a while. I just said, probably that's not a good idea.
well, I think that's the problem with the Catholic Church is that for thousands of years we've been told and pushed in the direction that you need these priests and to go to church every Sunday and to follow all these rules. You need this
Yes,
mediary, you know, like you, even though, okay, so my thought is if there is a God, there's a piece of God within all of us, or
that's
we
right.
we have some sort of divine spark or divine
Hmm.
attribute or whatever. And if, you know, we want to, we can tap into that or access that ourselves. We don't need somebody, you know, like I could see early on that it would have been maybe a good system if those priests were helping you try and tap into that, and it was more of like a um, person to person type of a thing. But when you get people sitting down and just performing, you know, a mass or whatever, I just don't really, you know, how are you engaging people? I see people passing out. I see people, you know, little kids yelling and screaming. You know, it's just not really that engaging. So I think that's the first problem with all that. But I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and now I'm pretty much just spiritual. You know, I do believe that there's greater things that we just can't fathom. But I also think about weird stuff too, having to do with science. So like, I think too, I had a experience when I was younger. My uncle was babysitting me. I think I was like 4 or 5, and I remember I was playing with a nickel, and like kid or an idiot does, I stuck the nickel in a socket and I got buzzed. But I just think about like, what if you know, I died then and this is this alternate reality, like we know about the multiverse is a
Right.
possibility, you know, like there's alternate realities. Do you think that, you know, maybe when somebody passes away, you're just tapping into another version of that reality?
And I've thought about that. And I can't negate that either. I know that the reality that I experienced was not this reality we're in right now, all the three of us, okay? The colors are different. Um, the feeling is different. The communication certainly is different. Um, so the other thing I think about is that when we are born into this reality, onto the planet, onto the earth, all of that stuff, from very beginning, we're told everything is physical, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's the five senses, it's your your eyes and your ears and your hearing and all that stuff. I'm not so sure about that. I'm really not. In light of what I've seen and what I've experienced, it's not the same. That's part of it, but that's not all of it. And so, but we are seduced. I think it's a very seductive place, personally. Yeah, I mean, come on, we got all these toys, and we got the electronics, and we got the people, and we got, yeah. By the time you're all finished, what spiritual? Oh, please, let's move on, right? Mm-hmm. We have to be practical here. We have to be physical. We have to, and I'm looking at this going, yeah, I'm not so sure. That's kind of where I'm at. But I learned that early on after the experience, aside from, people maybe couldn't relate, just this whole setup is really different than what I experienced. And so I think there are alternate realities. I think there are levels of consciousness that we are not aware of. And some of us can see that and some of us can't. For a long time after that near-death experience, I saw colors around people. I could see the colors better than I could see the people. And I knew, aura. Yeah, I knew when they were lying. I knew it.
Do you think I know that's not the reason why they've given historically, but like maybe why saints or certain holy people have the halo, like maybe somebody was able to see this, mm-hmm. And they'll say, oh, it just represents, purity or something, I forget what the exact thing that they say it represents, but yeah, I mean, I've when I was younger, certain psychedelic states I've been able to see same thing, like, certain lights and auras around people, if even meditating, seen some weird stuff. But when you look at your experience, did you feel like that you wanted to stay, like, when you were outside your body? Because I know a common theme among people that have had near-death experiences, and maybe it's just something having to do with when you're older, and they've lived enough, but they all get the sense that they want to stay in this other realm, like they want to stay there, but they get told it's not their time, or they get sent back, or something along those lines.
Well, I can tell you of the stories I've read, and I've read several since my own experience. I haven't encountered anybody who said, I have to get back to Earth. It is so wonderful. I miss it so much. I just really have to get back. Right. Mostly what you hear is, what? I have to go back? No, I don't want to go back. No, I don't care if it's my time. They may fix it. I don't want to go back. Right? That kind of thing. Because it's better there. It's better. It's easier. It's more loving. It's not complicated. And the communication is great. I mean, it's easier and better to be there. And if it's not your time, you can't go. You can't stay there. You have to go back. For many people, and I have to agree with this wholeheartedly, this is not home. This is a place where you learn. This is kind of like a school. You go to school and you learn different things. Well, that's what this is. This is kind of like school. For me personally, I wouldn't classify it as home. Home is different. That's how I classify it.
Yeah, I know a couple people that believe that this is like that we're infant souls, and this is like the learning version of that. And there's even certain, like we've read this book. It's called the Urantia Papers. It's kind of like an esoteric related to Christianity in certain ways. It's a well written book. I mean, you have to know how to read this book, because it's not like the way the syntax is structured and everything. It's not your average, 8th grade, 9th grade reading level couldn't read this book. And that being said, it talks about kind of what you're talking about, how there's all these different mansion worlds, and once you live this one, you go to the next one and you learn, and there's these different levels and that kind of stuff. So I believe that that's a possibility, especially if there's a purpose, or let's say we have been created, or we all are in this eternal universe constantly evolving. Then yeah, it would make sense that there's these different planes where you're learning different stuff, whether it's another dimension or just our visual capacity can't perceive all this other stuff going on, whatever it is. um what's your take on, is there a so-called heaven? Is it just this another dimension? Like, what do you feel is going on with that when we die? Do you think it's just pure awareness and consciousness, or?
Well, I don't think, I think we leave the body behind. That's my feeling, and we go into, you can call it consciousness, spirit, and we take the memories. It's interesting. Many individuals who have had a near-death experience, more adults than children. Children don't usually have this. I didn't have it either. They do a life review.
Right.
I call it the big screen TV.
Yeah.
And you're it. You're the star.
Settle down for the show, baby.
Yeah, that's it. Showtime. And my mother went through that, and she told me about it. And it was interesting to hear it. I said, wow, you must have been in a hurry. Usually you don't do that until after you leave, but you did it before you left. And so I think that we review and we look at what we've done in our life. And I think we come in with a contract to do certain things, not every single detail, but generally, what are you going to do this life? Well, I'm going to be a bum, and I think I can do that. Or I'm going to be a doctor and do X, Y, Z. I think we do come in with a contract. And whether it's a minute or 100 years, when we're done with the contract, then we are gone. We're done for that particular segment. And some people follow their contract and some do not. You're given the choice, I think, to follow it or not. But yeah, I think we come in with a contract, and I think that at some level we know the contract. It may not be conscious, right away.
Yeah.
But at some level we know what we're going to be doing. Some kind of idea of what we want to accomplish. It was interesting. I remember growing up that my mother said, well, maybe you should study to be a secretary. Secretary? Huh. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah, it's secretary.
Set your sights high on that one.
Yeah. Aunt Rose is a secretary. Yeah. No, I'm not doing secretary. I'll tell you that right now. That's not happening. Excuse me. So, yeah, it never even, things like that held no interest for me. Travel held interest, or other things, spiritual things, but secretary probably wasn't high on the agenda. So I think that we kind of have an idea of what we want to do. I think some of us forget. We know before we come in, but when we get here, yeah, it all goes away. So what were you going to do? I don't know. I don't remember. I'm not sure, right? So yeah, I think that happens to us, to some of us. And so we get involved and seduced by this dimension. We forgot anyway, so we might as well enjoy ourselves, right? Whatever it is we have to do, or would like to do. So that's my general feeling about things.
Sure.
Just generally. Now, I would say that that we create. One of the things that I hope that comes out of that book is that we really have the potential to create ourselves, because we have that spark. All of us have it.
Right.
Regardless if we're worth $1 million or $1, doesn't matter. We all have the spark.
Yeah, I think I definitely took that away from your book, and that's actually a common theme from talking to other people I know and some wiser people that I know, that we can literally be anything we want to be. However, some things make sense than others,
Yes.
if I say, I'm going to go write a book. Well, we do a podcast. I've done research. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but if I said I'm going to go climb Everest tomorrow, well, that's a little bit of a tall order, so there are certain things
Yes.
um, limits to it. But I think that if you put yourself in position, you can achieve, like it's an old saying,
Yeah.
obviously. I think people see it as cheesy. Oh, you can do whatever you want or be whatever you want to be. But
Yeah.
it's true. But you have to take the steps towards that goal. It
That's
can't
right.
just be, I'm going to jump here tomorrow and that's going to
Right.
be it. So,
Right.
You have to prepare. But the fact of the matter is, we are told, I think, in many ways, oh, that's not practical. That won't make money. That won't, blah, 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 whatever it is. But in fact, and I think we let go of some of our dreams doing that. I think we do,
for sure.
Which is not good, because what is the point if we're only going to be in the physical? You have no dreams or aspirations. You just kind of grind it out day to day, and there's much more than that, much more than that. So yeah, that's what I came away with after that. And it wasn't like overnight. I just want both of you to know it was not overnight.
Right.
Trust me, it wasn't. It took some time to really understand. And I want to share something with you that I thought about when I was thinking about this podcast last week, and that is, I had been thinking about the concept. Well, what if I decide I no longer want to come onto this earth plane? That this will be the last time that I do this. I'll go do something else in another dimension, another time, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, I won't come back here. Here's what I was told. Once you really understand how this dimension works, how the world works, you will not be coming back. And it's not just you, it's anybody. And they said, and keep in mind that if there are any loose ends, things that you maybe didn't get, you skipped over, whatever you want to call it, those will probably come to greet you again before you leave. Oh, okay. Your choice if you don't want to come back. There's plenty of other places to go. Okay. And that was it. That was the end of it. That's as simple as I can make it. Not really hard, because I was given a chance to leave. This near-death experience, they said, you can't stay. You have to go back. And I didn't want to go back. Mostly because the body was just, it wasn't that great. And people have said that, they don't want to go back to the body that's on the ground, bleeding, and in a comatose state. Why would they want to go back to that, right? I wouldn't.
Right.
And so I was given another opportunity later in life when I was around 40, that if I wanted to, I could leave. My mission had been accomplished, contract complete. If you want to leave, you can. And I said, no, I can't. And you have the choice to do that. I said, my son isn't ready yet. He isn't ready. I have to see him get to this level. He was at high school, I think, at the time, and I needed him to finish college. Then I could leave. And they said, your choice. Okay. So I stayed. And then I thought about it and said, okay, well, since I'm here anyway, they probably said, well, you're not doing anything, so why don't you write the book since you're going to stay anyway, right?
We'll give
No,
you something
don't
to
waste
do.
any time.
Do you ever try and tap into other altered states, like whether it be meditation or, some people use visionary plant medicine, some people just, they have different methods of achieving this, even working out. Some people, get into a meditative state working out. Is there anything that
That's me, baby.
is there anything that you try and tap into that,
Okay, let me explain something to you. For me, it's a little bit different, okay? And I'll give you a concrete example.
okay.
My son had recently changed jobs, okay? So he had a new job. I was going to visit him to take care of the kids. He was off to France on something with his wife, okay? They were going to take a work vacation kind of a thing. Okay, so he said, Mom, let me show you my new office. Great. Yeah, I would love to see your new office. We go to the new office, step off the elevator. He opens the door. And I just stood there staring at the office. He said, "What's wrong? It's not real." What? It's not real. This is not real. And it felt like an overlay, a translucent overlay was over the office.
Gotcha.
I touched it, it was there, it had physicality, and it wasn't real. It absolutely wasn't real. I touched the plants, I went into the workroom, I went into the little tiny cafeteria, little office where they had lunch, and da-da-da-da. I went into the boss's office. I said, "It's not real." He said, but Mom, this is my, I said, "I don't care what it is, it's not real." And so he was as perplexed as his wife, right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, why do I keep saying it's not real? What's wrong? I guess it was about 2 weeks later. I went home and he informed me the company had been sold, the office was closed,
Wow.
and it was over.
It was like a boiler room type scenario. Like it really wasn't
And I
real.
just went, and you know, I just was stunned. There was nothing else I could tell you. I was just stunned. And so I said to him, "Be careful with your boss." What? Be careful. Trust me on this one, be careful. Be careful, be careful. And I must have said that 5 times. And then I said, "I don't have anything more to say. It's done." And so that's basically what happened. And see, that's, for me, I guess you would call it meditation. I call it musing. And that's where I let my mind float. I don't think about anything in particular. I could just stare at a tree or a plant or whatever, and then my mind just feels like it's floating on here. And that's how it comes.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what I do.
we all have those capabilities, I believe, in
Mhm.
different forms.
Mhm.
For me, because I have OCD, I can recognize patterns a lot
Oh,
easier than people can. So, like, I can pick up, like I'll be
okay.
watching a movie with my wife, or I can say, "Oh, this is gonna happen because of this," or whatever, and she'll be like, "No, you don't know what you're talking about," and then it'll end up happening. I'm just good at, like, putting the pieces together, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, that's how
But
you do it.
so that would
Yeah.
be my thing, and I know everybody's got a different,
Yeah.
thing. So I know some people can take a nap and have a dream, and then certain things in
Mhm.
the dream come true, certain different
Yeah.
things like that. So, it's interesting. I think, we could all
Different
be
levels
super.
of tapping into it, you know?
Yeah, we could all be superhuman in some way, in terms
Yeah.
of tapping into
We're
the
all given
universe,
we're all given the gifts. You know,
Sure.
how whether we do them or not, or whether we use them or not, or whether we ignore them or not, that's up to us. But I believe that we're given the gifts. I think it could really, in many ways, improve the world if we really work together to do that. I just, that's my feeling. Um, so I've always believed that. Always.
Have you ever done anything to try and hone in your skills, like practice them in a certain way, or?
Probably. I can tell you one thing. When I tell you that I muse, I have to muse a certain amount of time every day. If I don't, I feel like I'm going crazy.
Huh.
I believe it has to do with balance within the body and with the mind, body, and spirit balance. If I don't have that muse time, I can't function.
Are you a creative person? Like, do you do anything besides, obviously, you wrote the book, that's
Well,
pretty
look,
creative.
okay. Um, yeah, I can look at something and I can see it, and then I go create it.
Gotcha.
That I can do that, and I've done that with many different things. Um, and I actually visualize it. Like if I'm going to move a plant or a tree or something like that, I actually see the tree where it's going to be, and then I go do it, or I get somebody to do it
Right.
because I can see it already. It's already there for me.
Sure.
I just need, then I just move the the physical part of the plant there. So yeah, in that way. And my mind, I remember I took, when I was in college, I took exams. You know, they have those psychology exams that they try on students. And I took some of those exams. And some of them was as simple as, okay, you're giving liters of water and you've got to come up with this number. And so, and they weren't specifically that number. Like say, for example, you had to come up with 2 liters and you had a 5 liter and a 1 liter. So somehow you're going to have to come up with 2. All right. So I would take these kinds of tests and they would always tell me, you know, you don't seem to do what most of the other people do. Yours, you kind of go the long way around. You get there, but it's not the same as the other people. Really? No. Oh, okay. So, so my mind in certain ways, I guess, doesn't work the same way as other people would. You know, they would probably take the more direct route, more efficient, blah, blah, blah. And I might not take that route. I might take a longer route and go a different way. That's what I would say.
So looking through, you know, your book, yeah, I think the most important thing though, like I said from the beginning, was that you were able to remember this experience at such a young age. Do you think more people have these experiences and just don't remember them, or do you think if you were to have this experience, there'd be no way to forget it?
According to the latest statistics, 23 million people in the United States alone have had near-death experiences, and I don't think the children were involved.
Right.
You know, and so that's a lot of people.
That is.
And from the research, I've also found out that this kind of thing runs in families. I was told that by a researcher. It's not just like one person has it. No, more family members have it. They just don't talk about it.
Gotcha.
Because they don't want to be ridiculed. Right?
So
Or,
do you think this is like do you think it's a genetic thing, like certain bloodlines are more
more susceptible to this kind of thing? Because my aunt, I had she's the last of the relatives, you know, of my mother's sisters and brother. She's the last one, and we had been talking, I guess, at least 2 years on the phone before she admitted to me she had a near-death experience.
Wow.
And she knew about the book I was going to write. She didn't ever say anything about it. And one day we were talking, and I happened to ask her, I said, you know, I'm going to write this book. She said, oh, Cindy, don't write that. Why? Well, she said, you know, people will think you're strange. Well, they already think I'm strange.
Yeah.
The book will just confirm it for me.
I'd say who cares?
Now they know for sure. Okay, so anyway, and I happened to ask her, Auntie, did you ever have a near-death experience? And she was very quiet. I said, Auntie, you did.
Huh.
And she said, well, you know, I want to hear about it. I want you to tell me. And it was a drowning experience, and it was an adult.
Wow.
She got to the light. The light was coming through the water. By the time they got to her, because she was away from the pier or from the dock, and she said everything stopped when she felt a hand grab the back of her hair or neck or bathing suit or something. It was from the back. And somebody pulled her out of the water because she had already gone down for the 3rd time.
Wow.
And I never knew that about her. Nobody ever talked about it, certainly. No talking about it. Right. And so, yeah. And a couple other cousins have said, yeah. Well, there was one of the cousins that actually went through the tunnel more than once, you know. And another cousin who would speak to her, I guess it was her grandmother who had passed away, and she would talk to her. And it was interesting because when her mother died, she cried and cried and cried. She was very upset. She was very close to her mother. And her mother, she said she had a dream. And in the dream, her mother said, you have to stop crying because I can't move forward if you keep crying, because you keep pulling me back with your sadness. You got to stop crying. I'm okay. You can visit anytime you want. I'll be here. But please stop crying. So that was kind of interesting to hear. I didn't know that. I personally have not had that experience, but she did, and that was a cousin. So there were some things that went on when I was writing this book, and I had contact with family that they told me that they experienced, and they said, we've never told anybody. Oh, really? No. You don't think we're crazy? Oh, okay. I said, I'm not even going to ask you what they think of me, because I don't really want to know. I don't want to know. And so, yeah.
Do you think though that like, okay, so I mean, are you familiar with Rudolf Steiner or any of his work or okay, so do you think that it has to do with maybe being an initiate or becoming an initiate into the mysteries? Like obviously there are some people that will look at this like it's crazy. Most scientists, I think 70% of scientists are atheist or don't believe in anything metaphysical. But then there's a small sect of, I would even say that you're getting more and more intelligent people, like some of the smartest people in the world think that we're living in a simulation. So there is certain groups of people that are starting to come around with this idea that maybe what we're experiencing on a day-to-day reality isn't all there is to it, So I think
Right.
people are starting to come around a little bit with psychedelics, with this kind of stuff, meditation, consciousness talk. YouTube's got tons of videos on these topics. But do you think that it has to do with, what Steiner would call an initiate and, somebody that's becoming aware or awakened, if you will, to these other elements?
I think so. I believe from what I've discerned from watching some of the videos and talking to people, I think there's an awareness that is happening that was not happening at the time I had this near-death experience. That they were not awake. That's not where we were on the time. If we were to look at it as a timeline, we weren't there. Not like we are now. Now more people are involved with it, and there seems to be some kind of interest in it. And, maybe some of the scientists will never believe it, but there is a group that does, that says, there may be something to this. And it's especially true in terms of children who've had near-death experiences, because when they report them, they just report them as fact. Like you're reporting about maybe an interview that you had.
Right.
So it's not even mystical for them, because
they don't have countless years of all the stuff, weighing.
Yeah, no, we don't have that, and that was PMH Atwater, who has done extensive study on children's near-death experiences. She says that becomes the child's world. It's as real to them as you and I are talking on right here and right now in this interview. It's the same thing for them. And I have to believe that's true. So you accept it as fact, whether anybody else does. Okay, but that's what was your experience. And there have been many people who have said that as adults, but it's a near-death experience from 0 years to 5 years is very different than an NDE. Like, say, if you were to have one right tomorrow night or today or whatever, it's very, very different than for a child, because you only see it through the eyes of a child.
Right.
That you're going through this, and then that's it. And even if the adults tell you, well, it was just a dream, it's nothing to believe. It was just something. It was just a dream. So you can just go on with your life and forget it. And so, yeah. And it was interesting to me when my mother was alive. She's not anymore, but when she was alive, at around 40 years old, we were having lunch. And I said to her, what did you think when I reported that I had this NDE, what I saw? And she says, I've always known that you were different than your brothers. You just didn't act like they did. She said, like you had a different song or a different drum, or you just didn't act like the other kids. I tried to get you really involved in playing and doing the, and she said, you weren't interested. You just were not interested. And I said, really? She says, I tried, but I just couldn't. You said, you just would not um, participate in the way other children do. And the one thing I will remember her saying to me, which was kind of different coming from a parent, she said, you know, Cindy, she said, you don't look at people, you look into them. It's like you're looking into the very being or their soul. She said, it's scary. I said, really? She said, it scared me all my life when I was growing up with you, or when, you know, you were with me when you were younger. I said, I never knew that. She said, it's true. Very interesting conversation as an adult. And I never knew that. And I think I said to her at that time, you know, other people who are friends with me, I said, have said the same. She said, really? Yeah. It's not my intent to harm or to hurt or anything like that. I just said, I just find myself doing it because it provides me with information. That's all. I understand how to move. I said, because it's for me coming onto this planet, coming from there to here, it's like you don't get the handbook. Nobody explains it. You're somehow going to have to navigate it and make something of yourself, or to help some people or something. But you have no clue as to what is really, really going on. You don't. You don't have any clue. Because it there is not the same as here.
Right.
So it's different.
Do you
When you
by
get,
any?
oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Mike.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
When you get these readings on people, do you have to be in person with them, or can you be on the phone? Are you getting any readings on me and Michael right now?
I haven't looked for that. I learned as an adult to not to shut it down. Okay, unless see, before, when I was a child, it would just bombard me. I mean, it was just like overwhelming. So in order to navigate, I learned to, you know, like bring it down so that I didn't so I didn't see as much in terms of colors. But what happened was that I'll get a feeling about something, and it's a very strong feeling, and I'll know, and I go, oh, okay. Usually it's when somebody isn't exactly truthful. They kind of dance around the truth or come close to it, but it's not really actually what's happening. And I've
Sure.
had that, right? And so I go, oh, okay, got it. And so it doesn't upset me like it did before, because I didn't have an understanding of it when I was younger. I didn't. So navigating this place it can be very difficult, because, like I said, you don't get the handbook. Okay, this is the way things work. Okay, no, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. This is the way they work, and you get, you know, a list or something on how to navigate. But for me, it didn't. It was hard because life here didn't have that. The other place, it was very simple, right, and very straightforward. But here is it's different, because there's overlays, there's agendas, there, you know, all the things we have to do or think we have to do in order to survive or make it in the world, whatever you want to call it. So yeah.
So are you able to look back and, you know, think about or kind of relive the feeling of what the other side felt like and
Yes.
compared to this side? And if
Yes.
so, um, does it feel like a different dimension? So like if you're outside your body,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're able to see things that are going on here, but do you
Mm-hmm.
think you're in a higher realm in the sense that nobody could see that you're person elevating outside of your body, kind of a thing?
Okay. This is what my friends have said to me. I can remember one time, I think I might have mentioned it in the book. A friend is coming to visit me, and I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time. And she was living in Denver. And so she was going to take a route she had never been on. And she said to me, I'm going to come see you. And when she said that, I saw her in a car with a red and white blouse on, right? And I said, oh, yeah, I can see you. You're wearing that red and white blouse. She said, how did you know about the blouse? I just bought it. I don't know. It's just a red and white blouse. That's all I know. And she said, oh, okay. And I said, be careful of your tires. What? Be careful of your tires. Make sure every time you stop at a gas station, you check the tires. Be sure you check the tires. And she said, okay. Well, she never told me until I was writing the book, and I was talking about the instance of when she went from Denver to Seattle. She said to me, you know, I wouldn't wear that blouse. I packed it, but I didn't wear it. I didn't want to wear that blouse. You saw it. I wasn't wearing it. And she said, and I checked the tires every time. And she said, do you remember what happened when I got to Seattle? I said, no. She said, we went and had breakfast, and the place that we had breakfast was in like a strip mall. Right next to the strip mall was a gas station. When she rolled into the mall we were all going to have breakfast, her tire went flat.
Oh.
I said, Donna, that would not have been good on the road to Seattle, because it was during the summer, and it was hot. So she took the night. She drove at night. Well, Wyoming and all those places in there is not a good idea to be breaking down, because a lot of it is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Desert.
Yeah, nothing. And I didn't even know she was driving at night until she got to Seattle. She said, oh yeah, I mostly drove at night. And I went, oh really? And she said, yeah, it was just her and her 8-year-old son. She didn't have anybody else with her. Her son can't drive. And she couldn't send him on an expedition to go find somebody in the middle of a tumbleweed land. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's like that. And she told me, she said, I've never said this to you. She said, when you told me about my accident, which was different than the tires, when you told me about my accident, she said, I would look into your eyes, and she said, it's like you were like far away, like you were looking at something very far away. And she said, that's when I know you see things. And I said, really? And she says, yeah, that's how I tell.
So
So
you
then
think
she said,
that
and I just,
this near-death experience gave you some sort of
Mhm.
precognition or something along those
Yeah,
lines?
something, because you and it can come at any time. And I'm just beginning to think about, as Maurice had talked about, honing the skill so that it is so that I have a better control of it. Because it just comes. I could be standing in a store. I could be in the middle of a park. It doesn't matter. If it's going to come, it'll come, and I'll know. Oh, okay. So it will usually tell me before something is going to happen that it's, or I'm in the middle of it happening, and I'm looking at it. I'm watching it. So, yeah, I believe that I came away with that. But again, I can't tell you absolutely 100%, because remember, I was 3.
Right.
So I don't know what happened before 3. I don't know if I saw that. I don't think so, but I don't know that for sure. It's, at 2.5 or 2, there's not much happening in your life. A lot of baby bottles,
Right.
yeah, baby food and diapers, So there isn't a whole lot
Right.
happening at that age. So
Well, people that go against that kind of stuff and those ideas will be like, "Well, why don't you use it to win the lottery?" Or so. And I always think the same thing. Like, obviously, that's not the purpose. If you have this great
yeah,
gift or this higher self connection or something like that, the last thing you would do is use it for like monetary gain or
it's
some
see,
something material.
yeah, because for me, yeah, I don't know if that would make me any happier.
It wouldn't, but that's the point.
Yeah, I'm not, if it would make me happier, I might consider it, but I don't see it making me all that happy. I don't. And so, And I don't think I really have all that much of an interest in that kind of thing. You know, I don't play the ponies. And so, yeah, I've never really considered it useful in that way. I think it's very useful to help people. I think it's very useful to let them know to avoid things that they don't need to go through. But yeah, I just never, I thought of it in terms of the lottery or something like that. It just never held an interest to me.
Well, it's like, the other thing is there's a fine line. So, like, most people I meet that are genuine, like yourself or somebody that's had some other weird experience or something like that, usually they're not concerned about, they're everybody's obviously able to do their own thing, but they're not
Hmm.
concerned about their job status or where they're at in terms of monetary value because they understand there's this higher thing or
Hmm.
higher purpose happening. And
Hmm.
then, you look at some other, like I said, there'll be people that'll poo poo it and say, oh, blah, 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 blah. But in
Hmm.
reality, those people are so ingrained with day-to-day life and the grind and
Yeah.
the materialistic side of things that they're not even if this is all there is, like, to me, like, let's say this is all an accident, the dumb
Right.
earth theory, we're all here by accident, there's no purpose, there's nothing. I would still want to live with the hope that there's something more than to
Yeah.
just go and live some sort of, you know, satiated life. I think that's the difference between these people, these genuine people that we're talking about, and then let's say somebody like, I don't know if you've seen the documentary Wild Wild Country, but like an Osho or some sort of spiritual leader that gets
Hmm.
corrupted with money and power. And I think that that's easy to fall into when you do
Oh
have
yeah.
some of those tendencies. So
Yes.
but that's just my opinion on that.
Well, and that's part of the seduction I talk about.
Right.
Place is highly seductive.
Right.
Oh
I got
yeah.
that picture right away. It's like, whoa.
Well, I know some people even think that this is like a prison planet or a
I've heard that.
punishment. We're living in hell, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, I don't know. I think that, and then it comes into, then you get all the people that believe that, for sure that there's aliens and that they're watching us and that we are confined to this planet. And I don't, personally, through my own experiences, I do think that there's metaphysical energies. I think that it's all the same thing, is
Yeah.
my it's if you believe in aliens or whatever, you were watching Ancient Aliens and you have some dream or mystical experience, you're gonna experience that because that's the context that you know it as. Or if you're a religious person, Jesus might come to you, or
An
if you're in the
angel.
woods, you're gonna see Bigfoot, whatever it is,
Whatever.
yeah, angel, could be anything. But I just think that there's this metaphysical energy that manifests itself in a way
Yeah.
that's conducive to, or way we're perceptive towards it.
And I think that more and more people are more open to that kind of thing, to that perception that there's something beyond just the five senses that we're going through. You know, I believe that. At least that's what is showing across the net as I look at a wide range of things that are occurring. So, yeah.
The ancient Egyptians used to believe that we had 360 senses, as in like a 360-degree bubble
Hmm.
around us. And I know that modern people say, "Oh, we've condensed it down to 5 or whatever." But I believe we've lost. Even if you look
Yes.
at like the way they ran their culture and understanding of the
Hmm.
afterlife and the way they built megalithic structures, they've obviously knew something that, I'm not saying we couldn't do any of those things today, but it would take a whole different kind of an effort than,
Yeah, it would,
yeah,
because we're at a different point again on the timeline where
right,
some of the things have been forgotten or lost or whatever, because we were busy doing other things,
right.
right? So yeah, I believe that. Hmm. And they had when I visited Egypt, I remember some of the things that I saw. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see everything I wanted to. But yeah, there were some things I saw. There were some tombs I went into, and I thought, yeah, this is real different. Really
Did you
different.
get to did you go to the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx and everything?
Yes, I did.
Did you get any weird? People say that there's like a weird electricity in the air there. Did you get some sort of weird vibe when you were there?
Yeah, I did. I remember touching it, and I could feel it. It was like going through, like electricity going through my body.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I remember that, and and I thought to myself, yeah, these people knew a lot that never crossed over into people who lived after them. It never got to them. It stayed. You know, a lot of the stuff, and I still believe a lot of the stuff is not exposed to the public. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Do you feel like a kinship to some ancients? Like I know for me, I feel like some sort of kinship to ancient Egypt. I don't know what it is, but it's just I've always felt this.
Yeah.
I've always been in awe of their culture. I know some people it's ancient Greek, some it's ancient Rome. You know, like do you have a
No, I would say it would have been Egypt
okay?
if I had to choose one, definitely. Um, and I can remember learning about the Sumerians and the Babylonians because when I was in school, you had a choice. You could either study ancient civilizations or you could just study economics and politics. Yeah, that didn't interest me. Skip
Yeah,
that.
that's some stupid. That's
I
Yeah,
even
it doesn't
even to
interest
this
us
day.
either.
Yeah, even to this day, that's some stupid stuff. So
so I said, forget that. I want to know about the old stuff. I want to know what
Yeah.
they were doing. You know, that sounds
right,
cool. So that's what I did. And so, yeah, I can remember thinking to myself, you know, the teacher was saying this and this and this. And I go, that's not the way it was at all. They probably, no, I'm not going to do that. Last time I did that, they went nuts. No, I'm not going to do that. And so, yeah, but I knew some of the stuff, that wasn't the way it was. And so, and I've had some dreams, not near-death experiences, totally different. It was some dreams about ancient ancient Egypt. I can remember it, and I did it for like 10 years. And then I would go back and I would do some research on it. And I go, oh God, that was true. Oh wow, I didn't know that. And
right.
so yeah, I can remember.
Are you familiar with the story of Dorothy Eady?
She was in the group that was the first group I belonged to called IANS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies.
Okay.
And I remember when her book came out. She knows Melvin Morris, who was a doctor at the time, a pediatrician for children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I know of Betty
So
because she was just
yeah.
finishing her book.
So her backstory is she was born I think in England, if I'm not mistaken. And her
Okay.
parents at an early age took her to an Egyptian exhibit or museum,
Mhm.
and she fell at the feet of one of the pharaohs and started speaking all this weird stuff and had
Wow.
so like the premise is that she felt like she was in a past life, so she knew and she was reincarnated and told her mom and her dad all this stuff about the king and the old kingdom and the multi god
Mhm.
platform and or polytheism and everything. And then when she got older, she got into ancient Egyptian, like Egyptology and it took into antiquities. Sorry, I can pronounce that. And from there, she actually helped a lot of the Egyptologists and archaeologists find certain things in the desert and different tombs and different stuff.
Mhm.
So she had this weird ability. It's like one of the only credible near death or not near death reincarnation story. There's other ones. There's like a kid that
Mhm.
was reborn that was like a pilot in World War II and different ones like that, but this was the most credible one since she was able to use this ability to find things that they had no idea were there. So that's a fascinating one to me, that she felt like she was born in dynastic Egypt and died and then came back as this woman in modern day Britain and then helped them find, all this amazing stuff.
And um, that's her gift. That's what she got because she was able to pull from from the past and bring it forward into the now. Usually the curtain goes down and you're not allowed that. But
Right.
for her, it must have made a big enough impression that she could then bring it forward into the life she was living now.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And that's highly unusual for a person to be able to do that. And I remember meeting Betty. I remember meeting her at those meetings. Because that was the first group that I belonged to, and I didn't belong to a group after that. I left the country to teach, and then in other countries they didn't have ions like they do in the United States.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you've been actively, you participated in
Mhm.
near death groups or different
Yeah.
different stuff. Um, Besides yours, is there one specific one that really stuck out that you felt like, wow, this is a holy grail of near death experiences besides your own?
Um, let's see. Yes, Anita Morjani stands out to me because she was already going down for the count.
Okay.
And they just said, okay, everybody, whatever you want to say to her, blah 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 blah, better hurry because she hasn't got a whole long time. It's going to be hours now. And
Was she older? Or was she in an accident or?
no, she had some kind of disease,
Okay.
and it was taking her down. And what she found out for her was that making everybody else happy was more important than her own happiness. And that's what was eating at her, and physically. Because from what I could tell when I did see auras, the physical, let's see, disease, okay, doesn't start in the physical at all. It starts in the colors. And it moves in. The physical is the last place the disease will reside at the
Gotcha.
physical level. And so apparently she had it for a while. And now she was going down for the count. It was interesting that the medical profession was unable to help her. But when she went back to, I think it was India, and she found her teacher, her meditation teacher, she found the meditation teacher. The meditation teacher told her, I think, she said, I have cancer, and they said that I'm going to die. Oh, he said, nonsense, that's not true. And so she began a regimen to change her diet, and she did meditation and yoga, and she was doing fine. Then she came back, and the people around her, her friends and family, said, "Well, you're going to go back to the doctor, right?
Huh.
You're going to go and get well, right? You're going to go see him, and he's going to run tests, and he's going to do this, and he's going to do that." And she did, and oh my God, the woman was within a couple of months, she was on her deathbed.
Wow.
No kidding. And so, when she crossed, that's when she had the discussion about, okay, you're going to have to change your mindset here because it's not working. And she knew that if she came back, she would live. She knew that for sure, no question. And they cannot explain it. The doctor told her, he made a gesture, which was interesting when I was reading hers, when I was listening to the YouTube portion. He looked at her file and he says, Anita, I don't know what to do with you. And he threw her medical file in the trash can. He said, I can't explain what happened to you. I know you're alive. I know you're going to be fine. He said, I've run every test possible. He said, I can't explain anything. I don't know what to do with you.
Wow.
And the same happened with Pam Reynolds. She had to have surgery. They had to shave her head. They had to saw into her skull, remove some kind of aneurysm on her brain. They had every tube possible in her body. And she was watching the whole thing with her father. She met her father and she crossed.
Wow.
And she could tell when she came back. She could tell what they were saying. She even could tell where one of the doctors had put something someplace, and she knew it. There was no way she could know any of this. The doctors couldn't explain it. And then finally her dad said, "You have to go back now. You can't stay." And she said, "You don't expect me to get in there, do you? Have you taken a look at what's on that table?" He said, "Yes, that's you." "No," she said, "that's not me. This is me. That, I don't know what that is." He said, "I don't want to go back." He said, "Well, think of it as diving into a cold pool of water." And she said exactly what it was.
Like a leap of faith.
Yeah, it really was a leap of faith for her. So that's what she did. And, and she told the doctors about what had happened. They just kind of stared at her. They had literally drained of her all of her fluids, because if they tried to work on the aneurysm while the fluids were in her body, they would have burst, and that would have been the end of it. Wow. That's what the problem is. So yeah, they couldn't explain it. The doctors really tried. They danced around. Well, maybe she has some auditory thing, or it wasn't any of that. The woman was clinically dead.
Sure,
that's what it was. So all of these things, when I think about it, there's still so much we don't know, because we're very rooted in the physical. The body, all of it.
Have you ever watched a video or like read a trip report of somebody that's on a DMT experience? Because there is a couple similarities, but there's also a lot of differences too. One of the similarities is this tunnel, except when people do DMT or whatever, they get shot like in hyperspace through this tunnel. It's not some sort of, it's this, you're thrust into this like other realm. And they'll see these entities that'll laugh at them and say, "You're not supposed to be here," or it's, "This is not your place." And then some of them will embrace them and are love entities. It's just a bunch of different stuff. But when you experienced leaving your body, was it like you said you didn't experience the tunnel, but was it this like
I did.
But I meant like a hyperspace, like where you're like shot out of a cannon kind of a thing.
All right, let me explain how that worked. Okay, so as I go into the tunnel, first I had to check it out, make sure it wasn't weird. Right. Okay, so I go into the tunnel, and there were little mirrors, like hanging in the air as the black hole was going clockwise. Okay, so I started out real slow, and I'm looking around and going, "Wow, this is different." And so at some point, it began to speed up. The colors pulled out of the mirror. And I was riding, I think I mentioned this, a river of light, okay? Right. And all the colors put together, it was white light. And I was like straddling this river, and if I had to say, even to this day, how fast this thing was going, 5,000 miles minimum, 5,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
That's how fast it felt to me. And then there was a screeching halt at the end, and I was in this kind of misty, cloudy kind of realm that I'd never been in. But it didn't start out fast. It started out slow.
Gotcha.
And so,
like the Willy Wonka boat ride type thing, except positive.
Yeah, it was fast. Yeah. And I went, wow. I knew I was. Mine was closer to a tunnel than a noodle. Okay. Right? There wasn't a noodle. It was a tunnel. And it was dark except for the light that came out of the mirrors. Okay, and they weren't very big. They're probably about as big as your thumb, as long as your thumb, and about an inch high. That's all they were. And then each mirror had a light that came out of it, a color. And then as I experienced going faster, the light became iridescent and brilliant until it was a river of light.
Now, do you think it's possible, like I was thinking about this too, that maybe our consciousness or our soul or whatever you want to call it is light, and that when we die, that returns back to the source of the light?
Yeah, I think so. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the spiral of energy, and it was more light than anything.
Right.
And then when I was in the tunnel, there was more light. Okay, and so and when I saw the entities, they were full of light. They had physicality to them, but they were of light. These entities,
It's interesting.
and there were no alien spaceships. There were no odd-looking people. There was none of that. I examined it carefully because when I went to the Louvre, okay, they had pictures of the Virgin Mother, and they had all of these things. You see a little tiny spaceship in the corner. What is
Right.
that?
Yeah.
No, there was none of that. And so just the entities who were quite tall, and there were like 1, 2, 3, probably about 5 entities. And it was interesting, one of the things I remember specifically, and it made me think about, when you think about something like a child comes in and they're a blank slate. And they
Right.
have these experiences and they go through life, and they collect these experiences or memories. And I thought to myself, when I was with his mother, at some point, she asked me about 3 or 4 times, "Do you want to go back to your body?" No, no. Are you sure? No, I'm not going back.
Huh.
Okay. So then we'd continue a little further along, and he'd ask again. By about the 3rd time, I said to her, "My body will not sustain if I don't go back." She said, "No, it will not." Now, for a 3-year-old to say that, and those were almost exactly what the words I said. 3-year-olds don't talk like that.
Right.
I know something about child development, and they don't talk like that. And yet I told her that. I remember so specifically. And so, I wonder about when we come in, how much memory, how much information, past lives, whatever, like Betty Eady did. I
Yeah.
wonder about that.
So do you think though? Okay, so um, there's different esoteric works and different things that talk about how we don't really become um, who we are till like 5 years old. That's when we receive this like divine spark or consciousness or whatever you want to call it. That's when we become aware of who we are, what we are, etc. Do you
Right.
think that that's the case? Because I think back and I think about 4.5, 5 is when I kind of started to really put things together that I can look back and remember.
I think some of us do, and I think some of us do it before then.
Okay.
They're not even born yet. There was a couple of stories, interviews that PMH Atwater did, and there was a little girl specifically who was born, and her father was alcoholic and had harmed her mother. Okay, while she was still carrying her daughter. Okay, and when the daughter could talk, there was one time he got drunk, and she told him. She says, "I remember you. I remember you when I was inside mommy. And
Wow.
you were screaming and yelling, and you threw her against the table." And the guy just got pale because he did that. And they were very afraid they were going to lose the daughter. Right? And so, and she wasn't saying this calmly, she was screaming at him.
Right.
And he just kind of cringed and kind of quietly made an exit because
Sure.
he knew what he did. So at that point, she knew. And I can remember when I was carrying my son, I remember 2 things. We were making tortillas one day, and he said to me, "You're the bestest mom." I said, "Honey, I'm your only mom." "No,
Huh.
I have other moms." "You do?" "Oh, yeah." And he commenced to tell me about another mom he
Yeah, I
had.
think I remember that from that was in your book, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was totally taken by surprise because I didn't talk to him about this at all. So it was very interesting for him to come up with that. She was taller than I was. She had a long black braid, um, and yeah, he had another mother he
Interesting.
remembered her. It wasn't me. I never had a long black braid,
Yeah.
and he said her skin color was different than mine. It was whiter. not Browner. But and the other thing, let's see, that he told me something else about a former, I guess, life or experience that he had. And by the time he was 8, it was gone. I
Wow.
asked him about it. Do you remember that? No, there's no memory.
That's interesting, actually, because there's a, like I said, there's a famous reincarnation story of about a little boy that he was this pilot that went down in World War II, in Japan, or one of those air battles or something. He was in a plane and he went down, and he was able to remember the exact plane number, the guy's name that was in the plane. That was his life before, so he was able to give every single detail, to the point where the dad of the boy contacted the family of this deceased man, and they're like, how would this kid know all this different
Mm-hmm.
detail and stuff? And that was, I think he remembered it up to the point when he was like 5 or 6, because he was having nightmares and different things,
Mm-hmm.
and then it all stopped once he became
Yeah,
that age.
and
So
that's what happens. The
so maybe
curtain.
that is a past life, or maybe one of our previous, experiences that are, because the I could see this. I've thought about this too. If that boy was related to that man that went down in Japan, that there could be some sort of genetic encoding of the experience in the person or something along those lines. But these are two different people that had no
Yeah, have
connection to one
no
another. Same
connection.
thing with
Yeah.
Dorothy Eady with the Egyptian stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's weird to think about for sure, but there's obviously something else going on there.
There's
Well, that's
something
what
else going on, I think, because there's a bleed over.
Right.
For some of us, if there's a bleed over, that somehow, some way, there's a memory, there's a flash, there's a something, and that connects us and to the something of the past. I can remember when I was in my 20s, I had a real fascination with herbs. Okay, growing them, reading about them, studying them, learning their names, all that kind of stuff. And my mother had no interest in any of that kind of thing. But I was fascinated by that. And it wasn't until I was probably in my late 30s that I found out that my grandmother was an herbalist,
Oh,
and she was an herbalist for the not township, that's the wrong one, for the village. They went to her if you had whatever, and she was very good with it. Now I never knew that. Nobody ever talked to me about it because that was old fashioned. But if you were sick, you go to the doctor.
sure.
That's what it was. And so yeah, it was very different. Now she had a connection to me, but I had there were no papers, there were no books, which I'm really sad. Anything that would give me any indication that's what she did. I just knew she lived in Mexico. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything else.
So what
So
did she work with that? I mean, was she using like plant medicine too, stuff like
yeah,
that?
she was very much into plant medicine, and she was the person you went to see if you were ill, and she knew what to do.
So like a shaman of sorts.
Yeah, like a shaman. Yeah.
that's pretty
And
sweet.
and it wasn't until I talked with again Dr. Morris, and he said, "Oh, Cindy, that's very typical, very very typical of what can happen with children, even if they don't know anything about the relatives, the ancestors, or anything like that." I
Right.
said, "Yes." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Very much like they have near-death experiences, members of the family, even if they don't talk about it, it's still there. The experiences are still there, and somehow they somehow manifest in the next. They can manifest in the next generation."
Yeah, Mexico and South America have a rich history of, shamanism, plant medicine, that kind of stuff. Even
Right.
if you look at like Maria Sabina in Mexico with her use of psilocybin to, give people ceremonies and different things like that. So, but yeah, it's super fascinating. Is there anything else you want to talk about your book, or
Well, as I said, I didn't want it to be difficult. I didn't want you to the person, whoever the person who was going to read it. I wanted to give them enough information that they would question at least what we have in terms of the physical, and give them a little bit of information about what science is saying about it, for those that are willing to step out of the box, and for them to think, just to think about a different reality, a different way of thinking. That's basically what this book is about for me. That's the reason I did it, and I was asked to do it. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't championing at the bit to do a book.
Right.
That was the last thing on my agenda.
Well, we're glad you did it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maurice, did you have a chance to read it at all?
No, I haven't, but I'm gonna check it out because I'm super intrigued now. So you really
Yeah,
got my interest.
It's a bargain. It's you guys can find it on Amazon. We're gonna put the link in the description of the video. So
it is a bargain, and I told the publisher I want this to be a bargain. I want it to go out because it's important.
Yeah, you can get it on Kindle. You know, it's like I said, it's on Amazon. It's easy to get. Whether you're using your Kindle or your iPhone or whatever you're using, you can pull that thing up, and it is easy to read, and you do a good job of explaining the
Perfect
experience.
for me.
Yeah, yeah. Maurice might have a couple learning disabilities, but yeah, no, it's a great book. It was a pleasure having you on and listening to your story and being able to ask you questions about your personal experience. And you know, maybe we'll get you on here again and you know, dig a little deeper. But appreciate you coming on, and we'll get you on again.
I definitely enjoyed myself meeting both of you. And I'm expanding and helping people. I want to help people with learning about how to take care of themselves, because, you know, you said, do you do anything specifically or generally about, you know, honing your skills? And the first thing I would tell you is, yes, there are certain things you have to do at the physical level as well as the spiritual level to get everything in alignment. And so I'm thinking about that very seriously, especially in terms of water.
Okay.
And that's the last part of the book. Is the water. Right. And so I think that people need to learn more about it. And I think that if I can contribute anything to the evolution of mankind and the planet, I will do that. I will try to help, because I think it's important for all of us.
No, it is. And I think you writing this book and you being used, putting the vibes out there, and, you know, whether we all want to believe it or not, everything we do, every action, every movement has a direct effect on everything else.
That's right. So dominant.
Yep. So, but yeah, it's been, you know, a pleasure, and everybody check out her book, Evolve: A Near-Death Experience. And again, it's on Amazon. We're going to put the link below. And thank you, Cindy.
Cheers.
Thank you. Maurice, keep asking those questions, even if they're internally inside of you, because that's what I feel. That's what I feel. They're there. I can feel them all the way over here in Ecuador.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, have a good one. We
enjoyed
it, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.
All right. Take care.
Peace and love.
Peace.